Hey there, greetings to my people from here at the Great Start Studio, where all of my drumming dreams are coming true. It's true. So this is where I'm shooting a video of the entire instructional series here in the studio, the 13 volumes of the London's Great Start Drum Set series. It's printed and the Kindle versions are available on Amazon as well as on my website, which is London's Great Start Drum Set. You can go there and check it all out. All my new videos from the studio will be available on that website for online lessons. Today I'm going to be talking about revealing some of my original drum heroes, what I call the Artistic Influence series. Drummers that I can actually see some of their playing in mine, that they've influenced me to that level. Drummers who truly changed my playing for the better, all the way through. There's some influence there in my actual hands and feet when I play. If in the studio, if I made posters of all the tribute, as a tribute to all the people, it'd just be every inch of every wall would be covered. It's just that these are the ones that have really, really influenced me in some foundational sort of way. So I made these posters as a tribute and a reminder of these great players. They're in my office. I'll be showing you. There's just too many to cover them all, but a handful that have really actually, I can see in my playing. There's so many great players who have inspired me in my drumming, but these are the select ones that have some way become a part of my style, my diversity, my teaching, my writing, and helped me develop my unique voice, which is a hard thing to find. You have to really listen inside. So anyway, enjoy the whole Artistic Influence series, and I'll be running them down, and I'll see you at the end. So next up, in my inspirational wall in my office, a series of drummers with these posters I made, is Steve Smith. Steve Smith is one of those drummers that has always inspired me because of his all-around drumming-ism thing. You know, he just has made himself the kind of player that isn't comfortable in all of these different style settings, and that is a huge thing for me growing up. You know, the studio thing, and then to be like an all-round drummer who can play comfortably. If somebody asks you to play a show and you just say yes, because you can, because you've studied reggaes, or you've studied meters, or you've studied songos, or whatever it is, right? And so that you are just comfortable in all of those settings. Steve is just wildly broad. He's wildly broad. Now, I think the first things I heard him in was with Journey, and I followed all the Journey records since the beginning. And when he came in, of course, they were still doing somewhat adventurous sort of things and having a foot kind of in pop at the same time. And then, of course, then they just went mega, you know, sold out with these giant arena shows. And then they really started getting kind of formulated. And but Steve always has a way of playing those parts that's really responsible and still responsible to himself as an artist. And that's like I said, that's a discipline that is so attractive. It's just so attractive. Steve is comfortable in many, many different facets. And then I think the next thing I think I heard him on was Vital Information. He did that for forever, and just, I think that was how he could kind of get out all of his stylistic ideas. And I mean, there's just a ton of Latin feels, just so many great feels in all those songs. And of course, I just woodshedded over all those. Those were all on my practice tapes back then. And I would just run them down every day, right? So you just get comfortable in those kinds of settings. I owe that to Steve in a huge way. And then all of a sudden, then there he is on Tony McAlpine's first record. And I was like, whoa, look at this. This is like one of my favorite things, just instrumental guitar, you know, heavy rock, you know, playing double bass. But his approach on that record, you know, they hadn't really solidified the whole, I don't know, shrapnel record sort of thing. It kind of became more of a thing as it went, but at that point, Tony was doing Tony's thing, which he's accomplished on on keys and on guitar, and so he had both of those things happening. And then Steve Smith comes in, and there is one track in particular. I think everything that he did on that record is really responsible and interesting. But there's one track in particular where he played. It's kind of like a really dry cowbell on it a part, and it totally changed the way I think about cowbell. And I don't mean like CCR kind of cowbell, right? So I mean where it became an interesting, heavier, funky sort of thing. And I've never lost that. That thing is at the core of a groove that I'm going to do a video on, which was from a solo I did called The Key to Sistine. And there's a part in there. It is the only part that has survived all of these years because it is the trunk of the tree of my linear squared idea. But the idea that this cowbell thing can be used in the double bass setting absolutely changed me, radically changed me. So, and Steve's got this really kind of artistic sort of approach, very dynamic. He can like do a whole solo on a hi-hat, right? Just a hi-hat out front. He can throw down on the brushes with just a snare drum, create a whole solo out of that. He's a real artist in the broad sense of being from very small to very big. His work with tribal tectones with Scott Henderson and Victor Wooten, that's some of the most interesting stuff out there too. And he's got double bass in that, and they get to play basically anything they want. And even then, he's still kind of responsibly playing. He's not just kind of winging it in all directions. There's so much that I owe Steve in the well-rounded drummer department. He's one of those guys that I have. It's like in my top 3 guys who just seem to play everything. And that, especially early on, was like a huge drive for me. I wanted to be able to have somebody just call you up and say, "Can you do this?" And and then you say yes, and then you say, "Oh, what's the material?" Right? So, thankfully, I got enough control over those areas, those musical areas in my life, that people would just trust me. And somehow I was on some invisible list where people would just, I don't know, they needed a drummer at the last second, they would just call me because my name was floating around, and then they would say, "Oh yeah, get Larry to do it. He can come in and just play it in a crisis." And that's so satisfying to have people relate that back to you as how they found out about you. Is I love the quote that says, "Your real standing in town is what people say behind your back." And I would like to think that people behind my back are basically saying, "Yeah, Larry's the go-to guy," right? To whatever it is, you got this R&B thing, and you want to have a show that has no fills and just laying it down, just completely straight, no real punches, just driving through. He can do that. If you need him to turn around and play on a prog record, he can do that, right? So I just, I've always loved that kind of idea of that, I don't know, broadness. Steve has that broadness. I really owe that to him. And of course I have it's so weird because I have this weird backdoor kind of, it's almost like my kryptonite is pop music. It's like you just get that's like a pleasing tempo and a pleasing groove and a couple chords and this nice melody, and I can't say no to it. I'm so melody driven. If it just feels good, man, I just can't say no to it. Even though in my mind as a drummer, right, you're kind of tortured in a way because you're like, well, there's nothing really new going on here, but it doesn't matter. It feels so good. And Steve has a way of crafting songs with all the Journey type stuff and all the other work. I mean, it's just, look at his discography. It's massive, right? And all the different kinds of work, and they've trusted him to come in and craft parts that are responsible, regardless of the style. So that really is, thank you, Steve, for showing me that can be done professionally, that it can be done responsibly, it can be done beautifully, and still artfully to kind of disseminate your own feelings and your own stylistic tendencies on the instrument in those settings. Very hard balance to find. I think Steve really did that. So thank you, Steve.